What's going on, everybody? It's Max here, and today I'm bringing you a video series that I've probably been requested more than anything else I have ever made on Twitch over the last 3 years, and that is my total beginner's tutorial for the 4X strategy game Stellaris, made by Paradox Interactive. We've been part of Stellaris events for the last 3 years or so, basically since I first started on Twitch 3 years ago, and they have most recently actually asked me to produce a really quick beginner's tutorial that ran on the Stellaris Steam page so that people could see what the game is all about and get a good head start. I did about 30 minutes there, and it wasn't enough to cover everything that there is in the game. So this marks the very first episode of a multi-part tutorial series for the game, updated all the way to the Overlord DLC. If you want to see more Stellaris gameplay outside of this tutorial, you can join us on Twitch, where I stream the game, and we try out a bunch of different strategies, a bunch of different empires, and I talk through, similarly to what you're going to see in this video, basically everything that we're doing. You're free to ask questions, and don't forget, you can ask questions down in the comments below as we go through it. I'm going to do my best to explain as much as I possibly can about the game over the next few episodes, and I hope you enjoy it. Let's just jump right into it. Let's click New Game, and let's just choose one of our empires. Let's even take one of the base empires that comes in the game, maybe the Commonwealth of Man. They're a little bit more, let's do the United Nations of Earth. They're a little bit friendlier, a little bit nicer. And press next, and I'm just gonna jump into a base game with the base settings. All right. So, when you first start the game, there is a lot on the screen. It's a little bit overwhelming, but I'm going to orient you to everything that's going on. In the very center, we have Earth. This is our home planet. It's the first planet that we've ever colonized, the only planet that humans have colonized, but we have space travel ability now, and we can go out and take other stars and gather and expand our galactic empire from now on. Earth, of course, orbits the sun, which we have in the center of this star system here. And we've got all the other planets around the star system as well. You'll notice that some of these planets, like Saturn, have a little icon underneath them. And that means that this planet has the ability to be exploited. We can exploit resources off of the various planets in the galaxy. We've got Titan, the moon that orbits Saturn here, and it's got a little bit of research that we could exploit as well if we built a star base or a research station on Titan. And this would allow us to gather the resources here. Resources that are displayed in green, we've already gathered. The game is preceded with a variety of resources that you're already exploiting. And resources that are white are unexploited. So you're going to need to build a station over them in order to exploit them. I'll explain that in a little bit. But this is the system view, and inside there's a whole bunch of icons. The most important ones are your ships, which you start with 3 little corvettes here. If I unpause, we can see them flying across the galaxy. Here they are. Little cuties there. We've got our star base, which sits at the center of our star in this system and houses a shipyard where we build ships and can actually be expanded with future technology to make it larger, to make it more capable. Below that, we have a construction vessel. This is what actually builds those research stations and those mining stations on planets inside of a system. We can actually do that now. If we take a look around the system, I see that Io has 3 potential energy credits, and with our construction vessel equipped, I can right click on Io and choose build mining station. And our construction vessel is going to jump over to this planet and it's going to start building it. You can see the blueprint for it sitting right here. And in a little bit, when that station is completed, we're going to have more resources that are added to our empire that we can use for various production. And then lastly is your science vessel. It's this vessel here. It's got the little science icon to represent it. And your science vessels are your most important early game ship, because that is what we're going to use to explore the galaxy. Let's take a look at what that looks like. If I press M or click on this button here to go to the galaxy map, here we have Sol, and of course, the planet Earth. And if we scroll out, we have the nearby star systems to our Sol system. And each one of these star systems is represented by kind of a dot on this map and connected by lines called hyperlanes, which your ships travel across. So a ship can't go from Sol to this unexplored system here. It has to travel along the hyperlanes to get there. If we scroll out even further, every single one of these dots is a star system full of planets, full of astral bodies, asteroids, all sorts of things for you to find and explore. Some of them aren't even stars, they're black holes at this point. And we are going to go out and explore them. And our hope is we find new planets that humans can inhabit as well. That's the goal. Now, in order to do that, we've got to use our science vessels to explore and survey these systems. We want to learn more about the galaxy that we exist in. And it just so happens that next to the Sol system is Alpha Centauri with a potentially habitable world on it. And that looks pretty juicy to me. Whenever you see this icon here, it means that there's a planet that you may be able to colonize with your species. In fact, I know I'll be able to colonize it because our habitability on continental worlds is very high. It's 100%. It's usually 70% or higher. And I can tell just by looking at this in our little tooltip here that this is a continental world. So my best first bet is to take our science vessel, right-click on the system Alpha Centauri, and choose Survey System. Now, there are two ways that you can use science vessels. You can use them to explore, and you can use them to survey. You'll notice that some of the star systems around us don't have names, and it's because we've never explored them before. We don't even know how to get to them. We know there's a path, but we haven't actually investigated it yet. So we could take our science vessel and right-click on that system and choose Explore, which would allow us to find out what planets are inside of that system. Maybe are there aliens inside of that system? What's going on in there? But in order to colonize or take a system under your empire's control, you have to fully survey it using the survey action. So that's what our science vessel is doing here at Alpha Centauri. And if we actually scroll in, we'll see that actively happen. Our science vessel, little guy right here, is scanning each one of the astral bodies and trying to figure out, hey, what is this? What's on this planet? What's going on? Are there any anomalies that we might want to explore? And what resources can we exploit from each one of these star systems? That's very important for us as well. So that's going to take a little bit of time. While that happens, let me orient you a little bit to the user interface. There's a lot on the screen right now. In the upper left-hand corner at the top bar, we have kind of our resources panel, if you want to call it that. And our three basic resources are on the far left. We've got energy credits, which is sort of like a galactic currency. Whenever you sell resources, you'll get energy in response for that. We've got minerals, which are used to build new buildings. They're used to expand your planets. Minerals are really the basic building blocks of a lot of your empire. And of course, we have food, which we need to produce in farms to be able to feed our population. We are eventually going to have multiple planets in this game. We're going to have, multiple colonies that we take care of. But know that almost every single resource in the game is, I almost said global, galactic. It will cover all of your planets. So if you produce food on a single planet, your other planets in your empire will be able to eat that food. You don't have to worry about the logistics of transferring food from planet to planet anymore. Used to be a feature, is no longer, thank goodness. After food, we've got our two advanced resources. These are consumer goods and alloys. Consumer goods are sort of like the luxuries and gadgets, like iPods and Walkmen. If I'm dating myself here, I apologize. But consumer goods are typically created from minerals, and they're important for your population. It keeps your population happy. It keeps them complacent so that they don't start rioting. Very important to keep the consumer goods stocked. All of these resources technically can go under zero in terms of production. If you have too many population, they're going to start consuming a lot of food. They might cost a lot of energy credits to keep your planets running. They might consume too many consumer goods. And if you go under zero in terms of production, you'll start losing consumer goods, which you don't want to have happen. So you gotta expand carefully and make sure that you're making smart decisions there. Alloys are pretty simple. You use them to build star bases, to build space structures, and to build spaceships as well, which we're going to do in just a second. After that is influence. This is a resource that you use to take new systems. You'll see us use a little bit of influence to take Alpha Centauri once we've surveyed it. But for now, our influence gain is +3. This is a resource whose gain and loss doesn't fluctuate like your other resources do very often, but you should be careful about how you're spending influence because it's a pretty limited resource for most empires. Next up is unity. This is what we use to unlock empire-wide bonuses called traditions, and it also allows us to hire new leaders to be admirals for our fleets, to be generals, to lead our scientific endeavors. You'll notice that we actually have a leader, Fiona Riley, however it's pronounced, on our science vessel here, and leaders have traits. So if I click on this little leader icon, you'll see our scientific leaders here, and each one has a trait, which is this little green circle that shows if they have any strengths or sometimes a weakness that might actually make their job a little bit harder to do. And your leaders and managing leaders is pretty important in the early game, especially because they give you bonuses to things like the speed of your research. If we take a look at this one that has the maniacal trait, our society research leader is able to research technology 5% faster than other leaders would be able to. And we're very lucky in this, but our surveyor on our science vessel has an anomaly discovery chance. So she's really good at finding strange things out in the galaxy to find out what's going on with them, what's out there, right? So that's the big stuff at the top. After Unity, you've got just a couple of indicators here that tell you how well you're doing and maybe how spread your galaxy and your empire are. We've got research, which is the income of research that we gain every month. This is pretty important to keep track of. And we have special resources, which you may get later in the game, but we don't start with any of those right now. So that's the overhead outliner the overhead thing at the top. The next one is the outliner, which is on the right side. It's a really quick view of everything you own in the galaxy. And this outliner gets bigger and bigger and bigger as your galaxy and your empire expand. Your galaxy doesn't expand, your empire expands. One of these days, I'll get that stuck in my head. We can see our planet Earth, and we can actually access the management of our very first planet, of our home planet. We can also go to that star station that I showed you about. It's actually called a starport right now because it's been upgraded. And we can manage it here. So we could choose to replace some of these buildings and some of these modules on the starport if we'd like to, or we can upgrade it when we get the technology to do so. So your outliner is really, really helpful. I use this basically every second in the game. You'll see as we play, but you get a really good sense of what's going on, what's happening. And we'll notice even that our construction ship that we went to grab the energy from Io has completed their job. Here they are sitting here, and here is the station that they built that is sitting over Io and is generating 3 energy credits for us just because we can, which is pretty sweet. So that all's been done. That's the user interface. There are a lot of things on the side here to access some of the panels that I'm going to be opening up, but you can access these in your own game. You'll get a sense of what all is in there. There's a lot on the left. But first, just below our resources, we have our pop-up area. This is where different notifications will pop up to let you know maybe there's something you need to do. Maybe there's something you are forgetting. And when you very first start the game, the most important one, before you even unpause, is to choose your starting technologies in each of the 3 trees. So let's do that now by opening up any of those icons. Opens up the technology panel, and the technology panel is split into 3 trees: physics research, society research, and engineering. And each one of these is a branching tree that branches out into different types of technology. There are paths designed for building new ships, or in front of us, we can actually see 2 specialized paths: the covert operations path, which allows us to engage in espionage and covert activities, and the energy weapons path. So if we want to have a really strong laser-based fleet, we might want to go down the energy weapons path. These are just guidance for you. You don't have to go down a technology path, but you'll get a sense of what technologies these unlock if you research them. Cool. So the first thing we want to do is pick a research. We've got 3 options in front of us. They're actually very nicely spread, which makes this tutorial very easy. The top one here, the global energy management, gives us an energy grid. This is kind of an economic research, right? If we build this energy grid on a planet, we will get more energy. But if we take a look in the top left here, we've got an income of 83 energy. That's pretty high for the start of the game. We don't really need an energy grid. This is not really a pressing matter for us. You'll notice it also unlocks something called an edict. I'll talk about edicts either in this tutorial or in the next tutorial. I'm going to skip quantum theory because it's the one we're taking, and we're skip down to blue lasers, which we covered a little bit. This is let's improve the technology on our ships. Let's get our access to a laser turret on any one of our ships now or in the future that allows us to do more damage to other people's ships. Pretty good technology if you want to be kind of aggressive, though we are a peaceful human species. And in the middle here, the one that we skipped is quantum theory. And I recommend that you take this one as a starting technology, unless you have a particularly aggressive neighbor that you're aware of. This is going to give you a plus 20% increase to your physics research speed now and into the future. It's just flat out good. And the earlier you take these technologies, the more benefit you get from them. So I would recommend taking the tech that looks like this. There's one in every tech tree, but we might not be so lucky that it's there. Click on the technology and you'll see how long it's going to take you to generate it and research it fully. Taking a look at society research, we got lucky as well. We've got society research from researchers plus 20% as well. I'm going to take this. It's just flat out good. It's a really nice one to take. The other one that I would take in this case is probably planetary unification, because it gives you a lump sum of unity, which allows us to unlock traditions very early. But for now, I think it just makes sense to take the base tech increase. It's kind of boring, but we'll have more interesting decisions to make in the future. And we got lucky enough that in engineering, we have the same thing. You'll notice in engineering, we have the Corvette build cost and build speed. So this is another aggressive technology that we could take to decrease the cost and decrease the time it takes for us to build ships, military ships. And then we've got our powered exoskeletons, which is sort of our economic one. If you wanted to go the robotic path, if the future of your empire is that you are going to be replacing your body parts with exoskeletons, or maybe even replacing your population with robotic population in the future, possibly, you might want to take the powered exoskeletons, because that will lead you down that path for your empire. I'm going to take the nanomechanics technology. It's just a flat out. It's the same thing as we're doing for the other ones. And you'll notice that our technologies are pretty similar between the 3 trees. Not half bad. One last thing to orient you to technologies really quick. If I click on this little change research button, I can see our options again. Each one of these technologies has an identifier. It falls under a type, right? Our nanomechanics is an industry type technology. Our corvettes is a void craft, and our powered exoskeletons also is considered an industry type technology. These technologies usually branch into similar techs to one another as you unlock them. So if we unlock nanomechanics, we may also unlock an additional industry technology, not always, but often. But the thing you want to be very aware of is your leader. So we took a look up at leaders when we saw our science vessel earlier, but I'm going to click the recruit icon here. We got very lucky that this worked out. This is going wonderfully, actually. Here is where you recruit new scientists or new leaders. They might be admirals or generals in the future. They might be governors who govern sections of space. But inside of the leader panel, there are 3 possible leaders that we could hire. The cost in Unity that it costs us to hire them, right? We've got 213 Unity right now. And our 3rd scientist has a trait. All these have a trait, but our 3rd scientist has a trait specific to an engineering research. They are really interested in voidcraft. They're really interested in building new ships, in building new weapons for ships as well. And because of that, they will be able to research voidcraft technologies 15% faster than any other leader would be able to, which is really good. Behind the scenes, underneath all of the game code, this leader also makes Voidcraft technologies show up more often in the technology panel when you research engineering research. So you may want to take this leader if you know you need to build up a big armada. You've got a really aggressive enemy on your borders. You should take this leader likely and start researching Voidcraft technologies with them. It's going to allow you to find those technologies more frequently. There are other traits that are more general, like Maniacal gives just flat out 5% research speed. And this leader could be in any of these jobs, honestly. Any of these jobs would be totally fine for them. You could sort of min-max the game and take one of these leaders early, but if you do so, it's gonna take a portion of your Unity, and you're gonna be that much further away from unlocking a tradition, okay? So I would recommend don't hire any new leaders except for one exception, which I'm gonna show you now. We've got a single science vessel out here exploring the stars, but look how many star systems there are. There's tons of them. So instead of just relying on a single one of our science vessels, we're going to build a couple of new ones. And this is my recommendation for anybody to do, because it really, really, really is important in the early game to explore and survey as much as you possibly can. So I'm gonna go to our station again. I could click on it here in the outliner, right, the Sol station, or I can click on this icon to the right of our system name, because I've upgraded it to a starport. It was upgraded for us by the game when you first start. And because we have a shipyard module, we have access to the shipyard tab, which I can click and I can build new ships. Here's our corvettes, which we could build a couple of up, but I don't think that we have many aggressive people on our borders, so I'm not too worried about it yet. But we can build new science vessels, and we can see the cost is 100 alloys. We've got 204 right now, and it's gonna take us 60 days or 60 cycles to be able to build it. But I'm gonna do that now because I want a couple more science ships out there in space. In fact, I'm gonna build 2 of these because we've got a pretty branching area of space. There's a lot of different directions that our science vessels can go. The more directions that they can spread out, the more science vessels you're gonna want. But typically in the early game, you want no more than 2, 3, maybe 4 science vessels maximum, unless you have a very specific plan of how to use them. Cool. So I had the game paused. Our science vessel hasn't completed Alpha Centauri yet, but I have noticed that we've gained a couple more minerals here. We've got 305, and we still have some resources in Sol that we haven't exploited yet. Remember how we used our construction vessel to go specifically to Io and build an energy credit planet, right? An energy credit mining station over Io. I can do that much, much, much more simply from the galaxy view. And you can actually use the galaxy view for a lot of the same functionality that you would use the star view, right? But I'm gonna take my construction vessel, and I'm gonna right click on Sol, because I can see that there's 3 minerals and 2 engineering research that we haven't exploited. And by right clicking, I've got the really quick, hey, go ahead and build the mining stations. Or in order to grab the engineering research, go ahead and build the research stations. Very quickly at the click of a button. I don't have to specifically go to every single planet and do that. So I'm gonna have them build mining station, and then I'm gonna hold the shift key. You can't see my keyboard, but I'll hold the shift key and right click, and I'll choose build research stations. And now in their queue, they're going to build the mining station first to grab the minerals, and then they're gonna build the research station to grab the energy research. It's quick and easy. I can forget about it, and I can move on to other things, like the first of our 2 science vessels that's just been created. Now, science vessels, in order to survey systems, require scientists or leaders on them. And so I've got to go into the leader panel once more, click recruit, and recruit a leader from this list. Unfortunately, none of these leaders have traits that benefit a exploration scientist, right? Maniacal and that research speed is only for researching new technologies in the technology tree. The only one here that has some benefit, kind of, to us is the eager trait, which not only reduces the cost to recruit that leader, it's 50 instead of 100, but it also reduces their upkeep. Keep in mind, for every leader that you have, they cost an amount of Unity. And if you hire too many leaders at once, you're not going to have any Unity to gain to be able to purchase new ones. So It's always a balancing act in Stellaris between those two. I'll take Luis, though I don't think he's a particularly good leader for this. He's somebody that will sit in a ship for us. And keep in mind, you've got to, after recruiting him, click on him to assign him to the science vessel. And now we can send this vessel out this way to survey some of these systems. I had a sense that this system connected. There was a small little line here that I saw that showed me that it shot out into this portion of space. So Luis is going to go that way. We've got, who is this? Fiona heading out this way. Let's queue up some for Fiona as well. And here we have Fiona's trait actually in action, which is awesome to see. Fiona, remember, has the trait which allows her to discover more anomalies. Now, anomalies are out there in space, and there's a percentage chance every single time a science vessel researches an astral body to find an anomaly on that astral body. And anomalies are things that may lead to more resources on those in those systems that we can exploit in the future. They may lead to a pirate faction attacking, or some kind of alien crawling out of an asteroid. There's all sorts of different anomalies out there in space. We found one that's relatively easy for us to research. We could do some quick research on it. It'll only take 120 cycles, but that's 120 cycles that Fiona won't be working to find out about space. I would recommend, when you first start the game, ignore anomalies and come back to them. They're permanent. They'll be there for you to research in the future. Most importantly is to find out, who are you up against? Who's nearby? Who are your neighbors? So I'm going to say leave for now. And we can always bring a science vessel, even a new science vessel like the one that just got created in our home system of Sol, to go and research that in the future, right? But for now, I want Fiona kind of focused on surveying Alpha Centauri so that we can grab a new colony right off the bat. We've got that new science vessel. Oh, sorry, that's Louise, actually. I lied. In 5 cycles, we've got a new science vessel. Here it is. And on the, I thought this was the Tchaikovsky. It's very close. We've got to put, of course, a new scientific leader on it. Let's choose recruit. We've got a list of new leaders, which turns over. I think this might be every, I want to say every month. I could be wrong about that. We're on January 28th. If we just wait 2 days. No, it's not every month. I'm not sure exactly when this turns over, but it gives you a new selection of leaders every so often. None of these none of these traits are particularly good for a scientific leader that's going out and exploring the galaxy, yet again, unfortunately, but we can do a little bit of a swap here that might be beneficial for our empire over time. If we take a look at our existing leaders right now, remember, we've got a society researcher that has maniacal. I like it. They can stay there. We have a physics researcher that's got a trait that increases the amount of experience they gain, which is pretty good. And we've got a physics researcher that we can recruit that allows them to research more about particle physics quicker. Not half bad. Not half bad. We've got an engineering researcher with a lifespan of increased 25 years. They're very resilient. They're very healthy. And we have a engineering researcher here that could research more about materials. Materials is a very, very, very good specialization for an early game researcher because it allows you to grow your economy stronger. It'll give you more technologies that allow you to get access to more minerals, to get access to more energy, etc. So I'm going to recruit this leader, okay? And I'm actually going to put them on the engineering research. But first, I'm going to take that engineering researcher who's on there right now and assign them to my science vessel. And because the game wants to be very sure that you know what you're doing, we got a pop-up in the upper left-hand corner that says, hey, you think you're researching engineering research, but actually nobody's researching engineering research. So you can click on this icon and assign a new scientist. You'll have to do this when your scientists die, which they will eventually. That was very dramatic. Your scientists will die eventually, but I'm going to click on our brand new materials expertise scientist and assign them to the engineering technology. You can always go in this panel here on the left and choose technology and see who's assigned and what the progress is for each one of those techs. Cool. That's going to be the start of your empire, but there is so much more to teach you. We've got to cover traditions and more empire customizations, some strategies for how to expand out into the galaxy, and we haven't even talked about how you should administrate planets. There's a lot more to learn for this game, and I'm really excited to teach you all about it. If you enjoyed it, if it was helpful, don't forget to leave the video a like. And hey, let me know down in the comments, or maybe I didn't explain something well enough. I glossed over something that maybe you'd like a little bit more explanation. If you leave me a comment down below, I'll do my best to answer. And I would love for anybody else who knows Stellaris to provide answers down there as well. I'll see you in the next episode. See you soon.